Today I am reviewing Beloved by Toni Morrison. Now, I don't know about you, but I find it hard to call myself a fan of an author if I've only read one book of theirs, especially if they've written a lot of books. But in this case, this is the first Toni Morrison that I've read, and I am officially a huge fan, and I officially love her. I have so many things to say that I don't know where to start. It has taken me literally a month to form words to express my experience of reading this book. Okay, everybody needs to read this. Everybody needs to read Toni Morrison. And I have to say that I'm usually not the kind of person who loves a book and then says everybody needs to go read this right now, because I try to be generally aware that people are different and we have different tastes, and what works for one person isn't going to necessarily work for somebody else, and that's fine. And I actually think that's great that we're all so different and that there's something for everyone. Even my favorite author, Virginia Woolf, I would never ever say that everybody needs to go read To the Lighthouse or everybody needs to read Mrs. Dalloway, because I'm well aware that she's not for everyone, and I even understand why somebody would hate her writing. So I hardly ever say this, but everybody needs to go read Beloved. I don't care if you don't read fiction, I don't care if you don't read it all, I don't care if you only read books about bean sprouts. You have to go pick this up if you're a person. And especially if you're an American, because this is our history and I think it's so important. This leads into my next thing that I want to talk about, which is an explanation of the Read Toni Morrison 2014 hashtag, which, as you can see, is part of the title of this video. Read Morrison 2014 is a project started by Ellie from the Bibliophile, which she created because she also wants people to read more Toni Morrison. The goal of this project is to read all of the books that Morrison has ever written this year, one per month, together as a booktube community, and to really ignite some dialogue and discussion over Toni Morrison and her place in literature. The conversation is also going to happen on Twitter, which is where the hashtag really comes in handy. If you want to join, you haven't missed anything because she only had this idea a little over a week ago, so April is officially the first month that this is happening. The April pick is actually Beloved, so I myself will be joining the next month in May. I'm going to link the video where Ellie talks about this down below so you can watch her explanation of it and also access the full list of the books that she's planning on reading per month that she wants all of us to join in on. I'm also going to post links to all of the Toni Morrison reviews that I've watched this year. I'm really happy about how many people are reading her this year. Also, if I missed any videos, feel free to post them in the comments. Okay, so Beloved. Brief synopsis. This book is about a woman named Seth who was born into slavery, and she ran away to Ohio, and the book starts 18 years after she's run away. She's now free, and it's about her life with her daughter Denver. It's essentially about how even though she's now free and 18 years have passed, she's really not free because she's haunted by her past in more ways than one. And the title Beloved refers to Seth's daughter, who died when she was a baby shortly after Seth ran away from slavery. She died without a name, and the only names that Seth remembers her by is the word on her tombstone, which is Beloved. This is one of the most beautiful books that I've ever read. I just thought the writing was absolutely gorgeous. It really blew my mind constantly, and I would have loved to pick out a passage to share, but I honestly couldn't pick just one. I loved every sentence of it. And actually, one thing that I really love about books and about movies and theater and all kinds of art is contrast. I really love the juxtaposition of two things that would seemingly clash horribly and end up working beautifully. And in the case of Beloved, it was, on the one hand, her absolutely gorgeous writing, and on the other hand, the twisted, disturbing things that she would write about. And I'm not talking specifically about the subject matter of slavery. That's an obviously heartbreaking and disturbing element to the plot, the core element. But I'm talking more about her twisted imagination. It's almost akin to when you're running on 36 hours of no sleep and then you finally go to bed and you have these like insane dreams. And you think, what could possibly be going on in my subconscious that I just came up with that trippy ass nightmare? That was a lot of the stuff that Toni Morrison wrote. It was some really, really twisted stuff. I constantly got chills reading it. But then you have this like disturbing, creepy stuff written so elegantly and beautifully. One thing about Toni Morrison that I really loved in her writing, and this is just my own feelings, they're not really based on anything, but you know when you read a really beautiful book and you know that the author put a lot of thought and effort into crafting these gorgeous sentences, and it doesn't take away from the quality of them. You still enjoy it, you still love it, but you can just tell that, you know, they were crafted. With Toni Morrison, it felt like they just flowed out of her. It just seemed so effortless. Okay, now I'm going to talk about something, and I'm so scared that I won't be able to articulate it right, but I'm gonna try really hard. So you know how you start reading a book and you really use the first few chapters or like the first 100 pages or whatever to like establish to yourself what the pattern of that book is? And you know those books where it's been flowing along a certain way and then all of a sudden it changes completely? I hate that. And I'm not talking about a drastic change in the plot, like if a plot goes a surprising way and I didn't see it coming. I don't mean that. I mean the style of the book itself. The example that I'm going to use is Life of Pi. Life of Pi is about this kid who gets stuck on a boat with a tiger, and the whole book is about their journey on the ocean. So those circumstances are unrealistic to begin with. So that's the sort of fantastical part of the book, but everything else that happens is pretty realistic. Pretty far into the book, they somehow arrive at this island, and it turns out that the island eats people, and the island is super weird, and I remember being so turned off by that, and I just was like, where did this come from? And I felt like this, it wasn't a surprising plot twist, it was that the style of the book itself had changed drastically, and I didn't like that. It's like if you're reading a book that's Jane Austen-esque, you can be pretty confident that it's not going to end with a dragon swooping in out of nowhere and eating everybody, you know? I mean, I like dragons. I'm not hating on dragons, but where the hell did that come from? Don't give me Pride and Prejudice for 300 pages and then have everyone eaten by dragons in the end. That's a lot. You need to give a person a warning if you're gonna do that. So something kind of similar happened in Beloved. No dragons, but the style, I'm not spoiling anything because I'm not going to talk about what happened, but at some point the style really changes. So in the beginning, I haven't really talked about how there are elements of magical realism woven into the plot, which, by the way, I usually am not a huge fan of magical realism, but I absolutely loved it because of the delicate way that these moments were inserted, and it didn't feel like the plot was serving the magical realism the way it felt with other books. It felt like the magical realism was just part of all the different components that made up this story. So anyway, I love that. But apart from these very careful moments that she put in there, everything else followed a pretty realistic storyline. And then at one point everything kind of changed. And I just have to mention this because it was the first time in my life that instead of repelling me and disturbing me and turning me off from the book, what it actually did was I felt like it grabbed me by the shirt and yanked me down into the world of Beloved completely. It felt like I really fell down the rabbit hole, and that was the point where I truly fell in love with the book. I was actually on my way home on the subway when I got to that part, and it was really late at night and I was really cold, and I remember thinking, when I get off the train I have to get home really fast because I was kind of underdressed and I had been really cold on my way to the train. And then during the train ride, I reached that part. I couldn't stop reading it as I got off the train and walked down the steps onto the street. And then I found the closest street lamp, and I just stood under it and read. And I swear to God, I didn't feel cold. And it was cold, but I was so concentrated. I was just, oh, I can't even describe this feeling, but it was like, there's no way I'm gonna stop reading right now. And then at one point someone bumped into me and I kind of emerged from beloved land enough to dash home, and then at home I finished it. And you know, when you finish it, when you finish a book that you really loved, and you loved it so much that you can't even feel anything when you close the book, that's how I felt. Like, I closed it and I kind of like stared off dumbly into the universe and I just didn't feel anything. And then I think I was eating or something half an hour later, and all of a sudden it whoosh, like all the feelings happened all at once, and I got really emotional. And it wasn't even like the story or the characters, even though I loved the story and I really loved Seth and her daughter Denver, but it was more emotions over Toni Morrison, and I just felt so grateful that she had written it. So yeah, it affected me really powerfully. Oh, and you want to know something super weird that happened? That same train ride right before... It wasn't that same train ride. I was on the train reading Beloved earlier on in the book. And look at this cover. I mean, I'm sure it's not a common one. I had never seen it until I found this copy that I bought. Somebody was selling it on the street in Harlem where I was living over the summer, and I thought it was so beautiful and I picked it up, and it's like a vintage edition. Anyway, I was on the train. It was like 6 p.m., which is rush hour, and for some reason the car was completely empty, and I sat down, and then the train doors opened again, and this girl came in and sat down in front of me. She was reading the same exact vintage edition of Beloved, and it was so crazy. And we kind of looked at each other and smiled and went back to reading, because that's how good it was. We couldn't even talk about it. We just had to be like, I know you understand how important it is that I keep reading right now. So that was kind of an odd review. I hope at least some of it made sense, and I really, really hope you read this book. And I hope you read any Toni Morrison. I mean, I think it's funny that I'm like, read all the other Toni Morrisons when I haven't read them, but I trust her. I know that I'm going to love her other books as well, and I can't wait to read them. I hope you join in on Read Morrison 2014, and make sure to check out Ellie, the Bibliophiles video. And I hope to talk to you soon. Bye!